Hello and welcome to Todd and Mike's Amazing Value Journey, where our aim is to give you the edge when it comes to understanding, creating and communicating great customer value and getting paid for it. From here in Perth, Scotland, I'm Mike Wilkinson.
And from a Canadian living in America, I'm Todd Snellgrove.
To session 2, and in session 2 we're going to be looking at understanding the commercials, or as we describe them, the value enablers. So let's take a quick look at our route map, and you will remember we started in our starting point last week, but this time we're going to be taking a look at understanding the commercials. And to do that, let me hand you over to Todd. Todd.
Thanks, Mike. Well, we'll cover a lot of different things in the commercials. The first one being, what is total cost of ownership, and the evolution of that to something called total profit added, which is a more holistic view. Here you see the price berg. I think it's great because procurement can see price. It's above the waterline. It's something they can see. It's something they can measure. But it's all these things below the waterline that we think we can affect their profitability with. How long does the product last? Are there costs of using it? All these types of things. So it's important for us to show that our iceberg is smaller than the other person's iceberg, not where that water line is and where the price is.
So I'm guessing, Todd, that it'd be really handy to actually attach a value to all of those costs underneath the waterline.
Very much so, Mike.
Yeah.
That's the idea, to have a calculation and some numbers and some best practices so you can have that business discussion.
Yeah, good stuff.
So, as I mentioned, total profit added is a term I came up with. It's an evolution of total cost of ownership. And the reason being, total cost of ownership, people use the term all the time, but I'm going to give you some examples of how people use it differently, number one. And it only focuses on the cost side of a balance sheet. And as we all know, customers want to be more profitable. They do that by reducing cost, yes, but also increasing revenue, speeding up time to market, increasing the margin of what they sell something for. So that's the evolution. And let me walk you through the 4 stages.
Yeah, now, I can see how this is all going to fit in, Todd, when we start to talk about the value triad in a later episode. This is just great stuff.
And Mike, what I'm going to do is go through an example that's industrial because that's my background, but let me just quickly say the medical world is calling this called the total cost of care.
Yeah.
Energy companies are calling it levelized cost of energy. There's numerous examples, so just take a step back and we'll walk through this. Okay. I'll try to use examples that everybody can understand, but an OEM, there's a person that takes a bunch of parts and they put them together to make, let's just say, a car. Because everybody at one point has bought a car or rented a car or something. So all these engineers sit somewhere and they say, you want to know what? I've got to make a business decision on how robust, how long this car will last. You know, I have to make trade-offs on how easy it will be to manufacture, my design costs. So they can look at all these things and they're saying by sales or marketing, here's what the customer is willing to pay or what the market price is, and they work backwards there. A lot of times, though, I find the OEMs aren't looking at how can I differentiate my product that I could then sell to the marketplace for a higher price or sell more of it. That's why those two things are underlined. If your company helps, let's just say a drug company, get to market quicker, as an example, or you co-develop something with another company, that will help them increase sales and the price they sell it for. That's not a cost reduction, but it's a profit impact.
Yeah.
Somebody builds it. Now, this is where procurement gets involved during the acquisition phase. And what I find is a lot of times, some companies will say, you know, we buy on total cost of ownership. And I say, oh, great. Can you explain to me what you measure in total cost of ownership? I will show you the 397 variables we measure. And what I find a lot of times, and I do some work with procurement, is they'll say, well, to us, total cost of ownership is the product or service that meets the minimum requirement of the business, so whatever that is. And then I will look at things such as, what is the price of it, but what's my minimum order quantity? The smaller the quantity, the happier I am. Who's paying the shipping cost? Are there taxes? Can I return something if I don't use it? And I think that's important, but as you'll see as we go through these examples, that's total cost of acquisition, which is a subcomponent of total cost of ownership. So if procurement says total cost of ownership, let's make sure they're talking about the same things. Somebody built the product, procurement gets involved, they buy it for their company to use. Company cars, laptops, whatever it is, travel. They don't use it, but whenever something is bought, it gets installed, operated, and maintained. It gets used. Now, for everybody that's listening, the value drivers here will be different. But for example, how much energy does the machine use? How much lubrication? How much water? How much ink? Keep thinking of all those ongoing costs. Product life, how long will this last? What are the repair costs? I see some companies that will sell their machines at a low price, but when you buy the spare parts, they're astronomical.
Or the printer ink, Todd.
The greatest example. Are you affecting your customers' production, the volume that they can sell, or the quality? That's not a cost reduction. That's a revenue improvement.
Yep.
You get the idea.
Yeah.
Is there installation costs, or their tools, or their warranty costs? So somebody built it, somebody's bought it, somebody's using it, and in general, people don't look at disposal cost. It's a throwaway. And let's just, from a business perspective, not look at sustainability for a second, but it turns out for some products and services, disposal cost is the highest percentage.
Yeah.
So in my old world, it was the cost of lubricant. Oil, you need that to make things turn. It turns out the cost to manage it, maintain it, dispose of it properly is about 3 times the price to buy it. Well, wait, maybe I should have bought the right stuff that didn't need to be disposed of so often. If you bought a car, is it important to look at the price you bought it for, the price to operate it? You don't dispose of a car, you resell it. And what some car companies are saying is, my car initial price might be higher, but the operating price will be lower. And more importantly, the resale value might be higher.
Yeah.
In industrial worlds, people are looking at refurbishing things. Send me back your old ink cartridge or whatever it is, and I'll refurbish it. So there might be value in disposal, not just negative cost.
Yeah.
The question is, and what I do is walk people through this. Take all those words below it, and don't get so caught up in which section it is, but it starts to drive the process, walk the life of the product or service to see where those drivers are.
Yeah.
So the question now is where are the big numbers? Procurement thinks that acquisition's the big numbers. What the graphic shows, usually the real big money is in the operating phase. Now, great piece of research was done by Accenture, and the purpose of the research was to try to get companies that make things to go into the aftermarket where the product is used. They said that's the bigger opportunity. So because everybody on here comes from different backgrounds, commercial aircraft is Airbus or Boeing or Bombardier. A Class 8 truck is a big MAN, Scania International truck, 18-wheelers you see, industrial equipment, fans, gearboxes, pumps, and light-duty pickup trucks for work, not for personal usage. That's what the study's based on.
Yeah.
And the red line at the bottom is the initial purchase price. So Mike, if you're going to go buy a plane for your personal use right now,
yeah,
guess what?
Not planning on it this week, Todd.
Okay, so next week when you go buy the plane, that price, that 10 million, 100 million euros, whatever it is, represents only 8% of the cost. 92% of it is the finance cost. The big one's the fuel cost. So if everybody remembers when oil was very high, some of the big airlines were parking their fleets. It was cheaper to buy a new plane that was more efficient. So depreciation, labor, repair cost. One example I use, industrial. So I was involved in the procurement decision for a big global company. 3 bids came in, they all met the minimum requirement, and I was asked to vote on what I thought was the best option. And I said to the chief procurement officer of an 11 billion euro company, I think the one that's 10% more expensive we should buy. And he said, why? And I said, because they've demonstrated the operating costs will be 2% less. And he looked at me and he goes, Todd, why would I pay 10% more to save 2% less? And I said, this is the issue. I won't give the name, but people, you need the denominator to make sense.
Yeah.
10% of 12 is 1.2%. But 2% of the big 88% is 1.76. Trust me on the math, that's 47% more important.
I think you've lost half the audience here, Todd. But the key is, I mean, it's just looking at numbers like that, and you get people who focus on the 8% and completely lose sight of the 92.
Exactly, because they assume everybody will be the same in use.
Yeah.
It's not. And you can find this research by walking the life of it, doing some of it yourself. And even if your numbers aren't exact, they're close enough to say, okay, you're in this range, 10 to 15%, but I can save you 4% here. Now you have to measure it. It has to be believable. You have to have some numbers. Maybe you need to guarantee it or get into some performance-based agreement. We'll talk about that in the pricing modules. Now, another example.
Yeah, the other point that you made there, though, Todd, is that the real number, the financial number, the dollars or the pounds or the euros, is actually more persuasive than talking about percentages.
That's how it all comes back for everybody can understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is actually, I think, a better example for everybody on here. My friend Rob McGuire put this together, who's done procurement as a career for 40 years. And his point to me was, Todd, there are certain things that purchase price makes up a very high percentage of its total cost. I don't know where his research came from, but discrete semiconductors, and you want to know what? The price might be, but I can bet you by adding services and implementation, you can change those ratios. But let's go back to photocopiers, which Mike mentioned earlier. And I'm going to tell a quick story here because I think it's very funny and hopefully people remember it. Our company said, look, we need to standardize the photocopiers that the people that are working remotely have. Everybody shouldn't buy whatever they want. And it was actually started by the IT people, the technology people said every time somebody calls, we don't know if it's the printer driver. So, okay, good. We'll standardize. There'll be a cost savings there. Great idea. Our procurement team gets involved. The need's been created. Desk size printer, color, black and white, scans, these types of things. And they sent it out to an office supply company and they came back, and I'll just make up numbers so everybody has an idea, but it's 275, 300, and of course, the number said up 75. The follow-up question is, Mike, what's better, $50 ink or $60 ink? What do you think most procurement people think?
Well, $50 is going to be more than enough.
Well, you want to know what? I would ask, how many pages do I print for $50?
Quite right.
Because your $50 and my $60 or the efficiency or whatever it is. So if I was buying photocopiers, I would say to the supplier, based on the following scenario, I'm going to make up numbers, 500 pages printed per month, home office, et cetera, give me an average price per page printed, because that's what I care about. It turns out that the more expensive printer would have been much cheaper.
I think we're just touching on something we're going to be talking about later on, which is about focusing on the outcome rather than on the inputs.
Inputs are what people are used to. Outcomes are what I care about. That's what makes me happy. That's what makes me profit. That's what matters.
Exactly. Well, Todd, that's been absolutely amazing. Thank you very much indeed. I'm kind of guessing that for some of you, just having total cost of ownership explained in a bit more detail has been really helpful. And Todd's TPA, which again, Todd, is?
Total profit added.
Total profit added, the real key number, the profit. That's been great. Next time when we get together, we're going to be looking at return on investment and break even. I bet you can't wait. We will see you in session 3.